Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a very exciting video. The other day I was looking through my camera roll and I actually found a picture of the first day that I had picked up reading again, which is really random. But I have a picture of the first day that I picked up a book again after 6 years of not reading at all. This picture is from April 27th and I started rereading Chamber of Secrets because I had never read the Harry Potter series all the way through, so that was what I started off with. And after that I was like, you know what? That wasn't too bad. I kind of want to read more, and that's when I started discovering BookTube, and I started watching a bunch of people on here before I actually started getting into book collecting and reading books and whatnot. And I just thought it would be fun to sit down and do some sort of video kind of reflecting over the last 2 years, but not really, because I didn't know how to do that. So I decided that I would take a look through my Goodreads and at the 182 books that I have read since that day in April, and just talk about the ones that I want to reread, because I wanted to make a video like this anyway, and I thought it seemed like a good, expansive kind of over the last 2 years. I don't know, I thought it sounded fun, so I hope you guys are interested as well. I have a couple books here that I just want to talk about that I would like to reread for whatever reason. I've definitely talked about these books on my channel before, but I just wanted to talk about why I want to reread them, and I thought that would be really fun. So I hope you guys are excited, and we're just gonna get into it. So the first book that I have on this list, I was heavily inspired by Noelle Gallagher to start reading Stephen King books. She was one of the first booktube channels that I had ever discovered, and I watched so much of her content over summer of 2020 that I absolutely had to pick up some books that she was recommending, and she was reading a lot of Stephen King at the time, so I started reading Stephen King, and the first book that I read is Pet Sematary. I have both editions here. This is the first one that I ever bought, and I used to really dislike the cover, but I think it's grown on me actually. The purple and blue, it's very not what you would expect from a Stephen King book, but it's kind of fun. But it's not my favorite edition. My favorite edition is the book club edition. Did any of you ask for my opinion on what the best Stephen King editions were? No. But they're the book club editions. They're the perfect size. I love them. I also just love this cover. It's my favorite cover of any Stephen King book. Pet Sematary is the first foray I had into adult fiction, because I was only reading Harry Potter, Twilight. Actually, did I read The Secret History before this? No, I think I might have read this one and then The Secret History, but they were around the same time. And it was the first time I had ever read adult fiction, so I was I have no idea what to read. I'm gonna try everything. And this was the, first thing I tried, and it stuck because I've read a lot of Stephen King since then. Not much recently, but I would like to read some more. But Pet Sematary does remain one of my favorite Stephen King books. I just think that the plot of Pet Sematary is so fascinating, and it's very creative, and it's kind of chilling, but it's not scary horror, but you're kind of unsettled the whole time. And then the last couple of pages of the book, you're oh my gosh. The last page, I got chills. It was the only part of the book that truly scared me, but it was just so unexpected, and the ending is so open-ended, and I just loved it so much, and I would love to give it another read. I'm noticing a lot of these books are kind of the first of a blank that I ever read, and I kind of want to relive that again. So this next one is the first Victoria Schwab book that I ever read. She was super popular on... where did I even see this? Oh, I know. I also started watching books with Chloe really early into when I started reading, and she talked a lot about Victoria Schwab, so naturally I was intrigued. And Vicious seemed to be the most popular of her works, one of the more popular ones. It was either this or A Darker Shade of Magic that I would have started with, so I just went with this one because the duology seemed easier to take at the time. It was just, from what I remember, so fantastic. It's been a year and a half, so I feel I just need to give it a reread, because I think this may be... is this my favorite one? It's either this one or The Savage Song that is my favorite one, but I kind of just wanted to pick one Victoria Schwab book to put on this list, but either one could be put on it. And I wanted to reread it last October. I think I put it on my fall TBR, but shocker shocker, shocker shocker, who says that? But surprise surprise, I did a terrible job at my fall TBR. So I still haven't reread this, but I just remember loving this book so much. I don't need to tell you how good Vicious is, because obviously you already know, but I just remember the times when I was reading this book and really enjoying this book, and it's just the first book that I ever annotated, and it just holds a special place in my heart, like a lot of these do. I would love to reread Vicious. The story of this one is also just intriguing. I had never read anything like it at the time, and I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, wow, books are great. Yeah, I'd love to reread this at some point. I, however, would not reread, what's the second one called? Vengeful. Yeah, I didn't like Vengeful very much. I didn't think it was a super strong second book in a series, but she's coming out with a third book in this series at like some point in time. So I'll be interested to see what I think of that when it comes out, but Vicious is superb. The next one is another first, and this is the first proper foray into like popular YA fantasy at the time, and I actually have reread this book already because I just loved it. Like, I don't even know what it is about this book that I love so much. Maybe because it was like the first YA fantasy that I like hadn't already read before, and it's like the reason that I got into the genre, and I love the genre so much now. Definitely one of my favorites, and that is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This book, when did this book even come out? I know I was super late to the trend. This came out in 2015 and I read it in like 2020, but I just remember at the time I was like, this is so good. Like, this is mind-blowing. Because it was my first like YA fantasy ever, so I was like, wow, there's more books like this? That's amazing. So I would just like to reread it. I think I reread it last March, and I would just like to read it again because honestly it's like a comfort book for me at this point. It is a little cringy like sometimes, and I'm not saying the plot is like amazing, but I really like the characters and it just takes me back to that time. Also, the second and the third books in this series I'm just not even going to acknowledge because like at this point I can recognize that they're just not good and not needed, but this first one I will. Yeah. The next book that I want to talk about is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, because I remember loving this book, but the thing is, I don't remember why. Like, every time I talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, the writing style was great, but I don't remember anything about the writing style now, so I'm like, you should read it. Don't ask me why, but you should. I can't even say anything about it now. I just need to reread it. I know I liked it, and I know I do like Shirley Jackson's writing style because I also read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and I like more recently than this one, and I kind of remember things about that, but honestly these books are kind of like a mild fever dream sometimes, especially We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but this one too, so yeah, I would like to reread this because I don't remember anything about it because I have a terrible memory. The next one I want to talk about is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This, I think I read in November of 2020. Yeah, it was my first high fantasy book. This is just a video of like my first blank, and I loved it so much, and it has inspired me to read a bunch of other high fantasy books that I loved, and I need to read even more because I still feel like I haven't read a lot. But The Hobbit was such a fun time, and it inspired me to read The Lord of the Rings, which I also loved. Such a good story. I would love to read it again. I would love to read it many more times in my life. It was just so good. Now we're going to talk about books I've read a little more recently. And the first one is a series that I want to talk about, and that is The Last Hours. Did you think we were going to make it through this video without some Cassandra Clare? Because if you did, you were sadly mistaken. Honestly, at this point, I would reread any of Cassandra Clare's series. Like, I'm literally in the middle of a reread of The Infernal Devices right now, but I'm not gonna put you through me talking about that again. So I'm gonna put you through me talking about this again because, guys, we're T-minus 7 months until Chain of Thorns, and I absolutely have to reread this series before it comes out. This is like the only thing on this list where I'm like, I do need to reread these like ASAP because I need to read these before Chain of Thorns comes out because I read these books so quickly because I loved the story. I thought it was amazing when I read them the first time, so I like don't remember exactly much about the plot or lack thereof. Let's be real here, the plot isn't like amazing in these books, but I just want to reread it, reacquaint myself with the series and this point of time in the Shadowhunters Chronicles before I read the last book in the series. We'll be rereading it probably this summer. Definitely this summer, so that'll be really fun. The next series that I'm going to talk about is kind of for a similar reason as to why I want to reread this, because I want to reread all of these, before the last Is it the last one? The 5th book in the series comes out. I don't know if it's the last one or not, but I think that's set to happen either in 2022 or 2023. I'm not 100% sure. But this one is also less of a commitment than rereading those 2 books because it is the Heartstopper graphic novel series. These are also the first graphic novels that I had ever picked up, so another first. This series is so wholesome. It's so amazing. I love it so much, and it would probably take me like a day to reread all 4 of these. So definitely gonna have to do that before the 5th one comes out, and at any rate I would want to reread these anyway just because they're such a good time. Everybody loves this series. Like, you already know. I don't have to tell you. The next book that I'm going to talk about is unlike anything else that's on this list because it's a romance book, and I'm honestly like, I like romance books. They're not my favorite genre, but I do enjoy them. But this has been my favorite one, and it's The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. Also, apparently there's a 2nd book coming out in this series who follows, I think, Vivi's friend Gwyn, which I honestly don't remember much about Gwyn, which is why I need to reread this. But even if there wasn't a 2nd book coming out in the series, I would still want to reread this because I read this via audio the first time because I couldn't find a physical copy of it anywhere near me. And I finally bought one, and I would love to annotate this book. The last 2 books that I'm going to talk about are books that I have read very recently, and I'm not saying that I want to reread these anytime in the near future, but I really want to reread these at some point because these are my favorite books in the series, and I just know I'm going to reread it at some point, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. Guys, you already know that these books are so good. I mainly want to reread A Court of Thorns and Roses because the rest of my paperbacks for this series are heavily annotated, but I did not annotate this one at all. And it just looks sad, but also I just want to read this again. I think it'll be fun. I don't really have much other reasoning for this one, but I think we all know why I want to read A Court of Mist and Fury again. Absolute best book in this series. No disputes, don't even try it. The plot, the romance, the tropes that are in this book, oh my god. Just the ending, blowing my mind. So I would just love to experience this again. Those are all of the books that I would like to reread. So yeah, 2 years, kind of crazy. I can't even begin to sit back and think about the impact that reading has had on my life over the last 2 years, and the fact that I get to share it with all of you is just amazing. I'm gonna sit here and like start crying or something, man. It's just been an amazing 2 years, so thank you to all of those who have experienced the last, I don't know, like year and 4 months with me and subscribing to my channel and listening to me talk about all the amazing books I've read. And yeah, I'm gonna stop getting sappy and I'm gonna go. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know down below any books that you would like to reread. That sounds like a fun question. And if any of these are also books that you want to reread. So yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.